Hello, this is day 3 of Who.
Didn't take too long, but we finally found one. That's right, we're going to cover a story with the most well-known villain in the show's history, the Daleks. This is the title monster's second story, and of course I'm unclear as to why I'm doing this. Because of your extreme laziness, you moron! Thanks for selling me out there. Myself. Anyway, honestly this fact, the second story fact, not my endless laziness, is sort of kind of the show that Terry Nation, the man who wrote this story and the original Dalek story, and who is credited as their creator, sort of kind of just repackaged the story for the most part. With new bits to shake it up, of course. The basic frame mostly is the crew of the TARDIS landing in their location, being found by the Pepper Pot monsters. From there, they meet up with the interchangeable rebels. In the first story, it was the Thalls. Here, it's lone survivors of the title Invasion. And in a future story, it'll be space security agents. Just roll with it. So we have the player set. And, they play run around from the villain and then defeat them. Or at least get away. Sometimes the doctor decides not to really blow up his enemies. However, you can still make something great with that simple framework. And, of course, this one does good by using a good old-fashioned sci-fi setting. That's right, the post-apocalypse. To be specific, a future where the Daleks have already taken the Earth for their own. So this means the Doctor and Peeps, another phrase I'm never saying again, are facing the enemy after they've already won. And of course, this goes as I described. They run around, defeat them. Also, at some point, we discover their end-all be-all goal, and I don't want to spoil, but this is worth mentioning. Their end-all be-all goal is to hollow out the Earth's core, put an engine in it, and then fly it like a freaking dune buggy, most likely. Yeah, big thing about the Daleks. Future stories will go on to homage this idea. So then that just asks the very, very important question. Why do the Daleks have this weird urge to play bumper cars with planets? We'll never know. I just have this thought of someone going, whee, all over space, so that's all I need. If there's one thing I'm going to forget here is the television production itself. Most importantly, this time around, it's very solid for the medium. This was, of course, 1964 when this aired, and they do their damnedest to make this at least look like, a version of London that's tore down, with plenty of, tore up signs and buildings and ragged old clothes. It's simple, but you get the sense of dread, and that's all that counts. The Daleks, of course, are kicking in their Nazi traits to high gear by creating the Robomen, brainwashed soldiers with crappy laser guns. They have laser guns. The one thing I really do enjoy about the Roboman aspect is that they can do far more sinister things to us than just kill us. We're probably going to see a lot of other examples of what they'll do, but this one's very horrific. Taking prisoners, turning them into brainless soldiers who are willing to die without any real will to stop them. That's scarier than them just shooting them. They're using their weaknesses to their advantage. So if they end up dying, oh well, they can just capture more. It's not a loss from them. It's them gaining an advantage and us losing no matter what. Oh, and before I forget, there's also the SLYTHER. The SLYTHER is a guy wearing a rubber tarp. Yeah, you kind of understand why no one's ever brought this up until now, huh? And of course the Doctor, armed with only an army of starving apocalypse survivors, 2 school teachers, and a shrieking little girl, manages to outsmart them and root away. Well, not entirely. The TARDIS crew is -1 as Susan stays on Earth with her new love interest that she met during the story named David. Also, forgive me, we're going to do a lot more skipping around than you people think after this, so kind of work with me here. Now, for the character, I gotta be honest with you, it was sort of welcome for me. Though I can't really mention it, the majority of what I've seen of the first season, the season she's in the most, I'm not a big fan of it overall. The big thing about her character is she more or less devolved into just being a screamer, beyond being someone who seemed capable of surviving out in space. Made sense because, woman had a good scream on her, and you needed to have someone in danger to get rescued, but I felt like there was a little bit more potential in the character, and it just sort of fell to a stereotype, unfortunately. I will, however, say she was great with the first Doctor. You do honestly believe for all of their scenes and the time they were together on the show that this was a daughter-grandfather relationship. Like I've said before, really the Doctor wasn't warm to Ian and Barbara at the beginning, but he always had a soft spot for Susan. And this was definitely a big punch in the gut for both characters. The Doctor having to decide to leave the only family he had left on Earth, and Susan, who's never really been on her own before, having to start a new life. It's big changes. The goodbye scene, and I beg you people to hunt it down, is just as powerful today as it was back then. With the Doctor making the most credible line in the whole speech, "Someday I will come back. Yes, I will be back." Beyond that big moment, Ian and Barbara are great as well. They mostly just stick to the role of, like everyone else, running away but fighting off the Daleks. Hell, there's even a moment where Barbara runs them over with a fire truck. I refuse to ruin that by possibly screwing it up with my mumbling, seeing as I have about 45 more days to screw that up myself. Yeah. So, really, all in all, it sticks to formula, but I can't help but tell you it's a very strong story in and of itself. Some will, of course, come along that feel very much like the same story with weaker elements. But I am glad to see that this format wasn't always dead in the water when it was reused. And it was also very good to introduce, I don't want to say the concept of someone leaving, but more or less leaving that idea and that door open. It's something that keeps the show going when a companion leaves. The fact that you don't stay on here forever. It definitely helps with what we know will happen to the Doctor. Will keep the show alive, but it's good that change is something this show embraced very early on, and what I think kept it going for its original 26 years, and keeps it going as a franchise today.